I wanted to start a little bit by talking about the show that's up right now, Last Hand, and that suite of works and the body of work that comes out of. So if you can start talking about, where that use of discarded books and where that series is originally coming from.
Yeah, so I guess that's like a small collection from like a bigger series as such, called Pages, which was the concept behind me collecting discarded books that were otherwise just going to be thrown out. And it's something within my making and process is, it's not just making, but also seeing, and the part of the art is also just using your eyes. And there was just something too beautiful for these books to be thrown away. So I guess that's like a smaller collection of just discarded books that I thought were really special, and there was something there are individual art pieces in themselves. And some of them I've left and some of them I've worked on top of. And it's something that I'm going to it kind of came out of nowhere, really. And I guess that's, again, part of my process is I don't overly plan anything. Now, these books kind of just came up and there was just like an instant, like, wow, there's something really special here and I need to work with these. But not overwork them either, so that the beauty is just like covered up. So I'm really interested about what happens over time. And generally speaking, anyway, like whether that's me walking in the street, up the hills, whatever it is, like seeing natural manipulation through weather, or just time from a book, like moving from shelf to shelf. We've talked about it briefly before, but there's just that subtlety of a mark that is made through someone's handling, whether it be through just their bare hands or whether it's through a pencil or a brush or a car driving over it, whatever it is. It's that instant, or maybe even that long period of time. And it was that long period of time of marks that I guess these marks were made in each of these books well before I was born. I was born in 91. So these books are dating back all the way to, I don't know, like 1926. And even before that, the concept of the book was made. People were thinking about it, thinking about the design of it. Might not have been the author who had designed the actual design of the book, but anyway, a lot of them are hardback books as well, so they can kind of withstand that hard surface of going back to front. There's a sculptural element to the books as well, and a lot of unknown is behind the books, and that's something that I find really interesting. Not that I want to find anything more, I kind of want to stop it there. It's that kind of magical mystery behind each of these books. So yeah.
And it feels like the place that you stop, kind of this consideration of the lifespan of the book, which is evident also in the way that you list the year of each book's making, or each work's making. That you acknowledge that these are works that predate your existence, or at least your handling, your receipt of the material. But also I'm really interested in this dialogue between mark making as a painter, as an artist, and the incidental mark making that happens, but also kind of this gray area when you start to talk about books that, especially since some of your books I know are sourced from libraries when they're discarded, or other sort of public entities where you wouldn't necessarily, just because you have the book in your possession, be the owner of it, where we get into this kind of line of vandalism, where to make a deliberate mark in a book while it's in circulation is considered an act of vandalism, is considered sort of sacrilege, but that once you reduce it, once we've devalued it from its initial purpose and it becomes material, then that elevates it, or that adds value. And I'm very interested in what that deliberate mark making is and where those lines are for you, but also then where those marks live in relationship to the demarcations that just come from natural wear and tear, because sometimes it's incredibly subtle in your work and it's not immediately discernible, whether these are deliberate or whether these are just the evidence of the life lived by this object.
Yeah, like that. I think it's a really interesting point. I don't really, these books, first of all, they come to me, and yes, they have a mark that's been made from someone else. they could be vandalized from someone else, if you want to put it that way. But then I come and have them, and then I vandalize them even more. But vandalism is quite a harsh word, and I think it's essentially, I can understand where that point is coming from. But my intention is not to vandalize them, but it's more just to respond to that instant, well, my instant mark against this long period of time. So these marks have been made up, through decades of years, yeah, and subtle marks build upon each other. So I guess let's talk of it as mark making, and then my instant reaction is sometimes to just leave it as it is, or to make like a really quick, direct mark against it. And it's actually just to complement the longevity of a mark against the like juxtaposition against the kind of like harsh, energetic movement. It's maybe just how I'm feeling on the day. I don't really think about it too much. If I do, I think it becomes muddy, and I think these works have like a freshness to them as well, even though they've been alive for so long. There's that, and I think the mark sometimes brings that bit of life to the book as well. Not to say that there's no life in the book. It's just, it might be that color and energy that just kind of illuminates this life. So that's how I look at it.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you source the books? Because I do think this idea that this is almost a second life, because these are often books that, as you said, are discarded or on their way out of public circulation.
Yeah. So they come from different areas, but the majority of my books come from the library that I work at school. They were just being thrown out, which is such a shame, really, when you think about it. And I kind of stopped them from leaving the department and the school. Some of them are already broken, so it's not like I've vandalized the book. I think it's really important to acknowledge that I've not taken the actual hardback off the book itself, because that, books are important, and they're important that they stay intact. And that's another story. But so yeah, they're kind of broken bits hanging about, and that's why they're getting rid of them. So I've kind of taken them on board. It's as simple as that. They were another material to work on. I love just working with new materials that I'm not used to working with, like the idea of like an unplanned surface or a, is really important to my practice, I guess. Like even just recently, just moving away from the books, and we can come back to the books. I'm not diverting the answer. It's just I've been working with canvas and linens, and actually placing them on I'm an art teacher, so I've been placing them on the classroom floor, and like just spraying them on the ground and allowing just pupils in their way in and out, teachers and me on my way in and out with my bike or whatever, to make marks. And that idea of it just being like a carpet, but like lots of people being involved in a mark, and kind of priming a surface in a way. So yeah, but the books, yeah, so the school environment that I work in actually is really important to the way in which I work. So I teach a lot of junior primary kids as well, and just like their creativity and their mark making as well, and their freedom just to explore. And I think as pupils get older, and as we get older as well, we can become so aware of everybody else that our marks become so rigid, our drawing becomes so, it needs to be that for it to be a good piece of art. And actually, for me, it's as long as it's a joy, and that, it's very personal, very subjective. But yeah, mark making has always been very interesting to me, and it's something that I'm wanting to explore, and I don't really know where my work's going, and that's fine, I think. But it's at this point where I've kind of been working with these pages that have been discarded from a school, I'm working with canvases and getting the kids involved with the work as well as a kind of collaborative, and they loved, and it's a great way for them to talk about conceptual and contemporary art as well, rather than be like, sit down and draw a pear for 2 hours, like gone are those days. I think we need to be educating them about opening and thinking in different ways as well.
So are they aware when you do these canvas lays or the linen lays on the floor? Are they kind of
Oh
aware
yeah,
this is a role that they're
yeah.
playing?
Well, first of all, they're like, why is this on the floor? And then they're like, is this an art piece? And then that opens up discussion to a whole classroom discussion, and that's an art lesson right there. You know, we don't even need to get the pencils out. You know, it's so I think yeah, it's kind of like a plenary as they come in. You know, they come into the classroom, and that's, or I've got like a banana duct tape to the wall, and they're like, why have you got a banana duct tape to the wall? Do you know? And that's another discussion. And then the funny thing is, they ended up putting, by the end of the lesson, they were sticking like pencils, duct taped onto the wall, and kind of taking the piss a bit. But like, I kind of like that. so yeah, it's a good environment for me to work in. It's very inspiring for me and my work.
There seems to be a relationship between kind of those two mechanisms, the works on the floor and the works with the books, in that they're both archival in a sense and a record of time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And do you see that as sort of a common denominator? Is that something that you keep going back to conceptually, regardless of the material? Are you a record keeper by nature?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely. And I don't really know why. I don't have an answer to that, Bianca. There is that aspect of time, that just the mystery of time and just what happens over time. And you can kind of be in control of it. You know, I can lift up my glass of water and drink it and then put it down. I'm in control of that time. But the books are very much, there's a mystery to that time. And there's that. So time's a huge thing. It's a massive topic. And bringing it into an artwork, whether that's through movement or, you know, the movement of how, you know, like when you do line drawing, for example, are your marks really quick and spontaneous, or are they slow, and are they, maybe one line is just like 3 hours long? I don't know, there's a lot in it. And I've not pinned it down, and I don't want to pin it down, because if I pin it down, then I'm going to be stuck, and I want to be free. So yeah, hopefully that can answer your question.
How much do you think about or engage with the content of the books? Sometimes the titles are evident and visible, sometimes they're obscure.
I don't really get into that too much. Like, I think if I do, then I get sidetracked. I'm purely just based about the surface. Again, the mystery. I don't want to find out too much about them. I want other people to kind of talk about it, and I don't want to have all the answers. So yeah, that's probably the worst answer to the question, but
I think it's interesting because knowing where to hold that line, knowing how far you want to commit to this material as material, is an important thing to realize in order to maintain. And it's clear that looking at your work as this sort of little subgroup we've put together for the show at the gallery, that there is this ambiguity, and that at first glance, without context, you might not even recognize these as book covers. That, you know, this is in some ways a wholly separate life, and that there's something kind of liberating in that this isn't bound, that it is archival, it is a record, it does contain the sense of time and of bodies and evidence of the body. But at the same time, you've kind of liberated it from that context on first glance, on first encounter. And I think that that's a very hard line to tread in some ways conceptually, but you've managed to do it by really considering presentation of the material.
Yeah, I think some people, they look at the work and they see it in a frame, or they see it and they don't think of it as being a book cover. And then the more they see it, you get a message like, oh, I've only just realized these are books. Do you know, like, and they're always asking questions about the dates and this and that. And I explain what the dates are. The dates trace back to the publication of the book, which is sometimes in the, obviously there's a title. Sometimes I can trace that by going online, or even just stamps or whatever. So yeah, there's people look at them as just like paintings or just works of art, like rather than books always, and that's always quite a nice thing to keep that open as well. Yeah.
To revisit something you said a few minutes ago about the object value and the integrity of keeping the books intact, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, as in, like, if a book was intact, then I would leave it. I would totally leave it. It's like taking someone away from their home. Like just keep it in there. I wouldn't want to, or else I'd just be going around picking all these books that look nice and destroying them in a sense, you know, and I think that's quite sad. They came to me as they came, so, and that's how I worked on them. So yeah, yeah, I wouldn't do anything else to a book. Yeah, and speaking to it like it's a human here. It's like, but it's true, you know, that they're important and they've been made. It's like I wouldn't want anyone to take my artwork and rip it apart and then make it their own. Or maybe I'm already doing that. I don't know. With the
Do you see, you know, there's always constant talk about, really on both sides, about print being increasingly irrelevant, especially in educational settings where we're turning more and more to digital media, either out of necessity in the last year or just because that's the direction things have gone. And at the same time, there's always this perpetual conversation for the last 100 years about the death of painting. And do you see these kind of modes of obsolescence, or do you see sort of an archivally rooted practice as something that's combative towards obsolescence?
Gosh, that is an awfully deep question. Big words in there. For are you asking me, are we moving away, or are we moving too much into a digital world? Is that what you're kind of?
Do you see your work as being sort of an act of preservation of either of those practices, of making sure that these discarded books have a life beyond just being discarded, and also that there is a relationship there to the action of mark making or painting as a deliberate action, that those two things are not independent of one another, or that they carry the same intention?
Yeah, I see each of these works as like as a painting. Yeah, yeah, I do. And hopefully they'll stay like that for forever. That kind of journey of these works will carry on. It's a funny one because actually I put like an end date on them, really, haven't I? Because I put from like 1926 whatever to 2021, and actually I don't want that to, you know, they kind of start a new journey as being paintings as such.
Now, the first time I encountered the way that you demarcate the years, it reminded me almost of a tombstone, where you see, you know, your birth, year of death. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of elegant way of addressing that this is a set lifespan of this object as a functional object, as a book.
It's true, actually. I've thought of it like that.
You know,
the tombstone still remains for people to go and visualize it and still see, you know, there's still beautiful things, a celebration of life, of time again. So yeah, I can see that connection. And that's the beauty of it, is that you're now bringing new things, you know, you're making me think about things that I don't really always think about when I'm making, and nor should I really, but then that's the beauty of art, really, is that it blossoms new ideas.
Well, and your work pulls up a lot of that, and part of the reason that I ask about kind of the digital application of things, or where that relationship lies, is because yours is the first body of work that I've shown through my gallery online without having seen it in person. Mm-hmm. And I have been, you know, from day one feeling very ambivalent about that, because for me, you know, for everybody, seeing art in person, we obviously know, is a radically different experience than seeing it on the screen. And we've all, I think, at least on the commercial side of things, tried our best in the last year with online art fairs, with, you know, whatever you want to call them, virtual viewing rooms, which are websites, and we all know it. And those are fine mechanisms to kind of keep the wheels turning when you have no alternative, but obviously everyone participating in that mechanism knows that it does not supplant the reality of being in front of a work. While at the same time, you have this kind of increased opportunity level that you can't see everything. You can't get to every show all the time, pandemic or no pandemic. You can't necessarily see the work of an artist who's on another continent so easily. So that there's a practicality and a functionality. And I was so conceptually interested in what you were doing and all of these questions that we're discussing, and the work displays beautifully on the screen. It translates well to 2 dimensions, which is not always the case with anything that's a dimensional object, or even with a painting, that I thought it was worth showing it. But there is still this thing in the back of my head that I haven't seen these works in person. So how well can I really assess them? How qualified am I to even ask you some of these questions, not knowing what it's like to stand in front of the work? And I just wonder, because you do have a very robust online presence with your work. And that's how it came to me, was someone said, I really think you should look at this, and sent me something, I think, via Instagram. Yeah. So I'm interested in kind of where that relationship is for you, because you do engage that, we all engage that. And in some
Yeah.
ways it seems slightly antithetical.
Yeah, it's a discussion I've had with a lot of friends, artists. You know, obviously this kind of social media presence, it's important to document your work really well. I think documentation of your work is, you know, the better you document it, the more clear it's going to come across. Not always all the time, but I guess with these works, they're so small. I think people, once they get the idea that they are pages, they can start to visualize actually holding these things. You know, they're very small. Obviously with COVID, especially over in the UK, only galleries are only just starting to open just now. And that's been, it's great that they're opening. I'm going to go later on actually and see one show. And it's also given galleries more time to invest, you know, construction and how they view or present their artworks. I think that's been quite a challenging thing as well. Is it, how have I dealt with it? Well, it's funny, you know, I've never had so many shows actually. And I think my most recent work has been going down really well with the audience out there, which is really encouraging. But ideally, I would love people to see my work in, you know, physical form. I had a show in Milan, which was physical, which was great. So I managed to send some work out there. But apart from that, you know, most things have been visual, on digitally speaking. And I think that is a wee bit of a shame, but I guess my hope one day is that I will be able to send some work over and people will be able to see my work in flesh, because I think it's really important to kind of smell it. You know, when you go to a show, it's a spectacle, right? You go there it's like going to a football match or a soccer match, sorry, or whatever match. You know, like you go there and you hear the sounds, you feed off the people, you feed off conversations in the gallery, right? You walking down the gallery, you hear someone speaking about an artwork, makes you think about it differently. So there's that aspect to a gallery or an exhibition show, which is definitely missing. You know, at the moment I'm in my studio, I'm there by myself, making it, I'm photographing it by myself. You know, I've got 2 cats and my wife will give me feedback. But my cats don't. But, you know, and also my show coming up in London with Delphinian Gallery. That's another virtual show, but it was part of like an open group show that was selected for. And again, there are a selection of pages that are going to be shown in there as well, which is cool. The nice thing about the works being so small is, and also being pages, you're on Amazon, right? And you buy your book or whatever publisher, it doesn't matter where you go to, and it's the same as, I guess, the idea of like buying a book online. It comes through the door, you unwrap it, you see it, you hold it, and it's a beautiful thing in your hand. This is slightly different, obviously, it's like a painting, but it's still the essence of a book. But you know what it's like? You go into a bookshop, you pick your book, you feel your book. Oh, it's a lovely material. There's that connection with the book that you have instantly. So yeah, I guess there's challenges with it being online, but I guess I'm trying to overcome that with everything that's going on. And I think looking ahead in the future, we're becoming more digital. You know, there's so many artists out there, young artists, old artists that are trying to make it through. And we need to start somewhere, and getting your work on a digital platform is so important. And I think you don't rely, but you hope that great people will or galleries will pick up on your work, will share it. And that's just, you know, at the end of the day, I just want people to see my work and actually respond to it, whether they like it or they don't like it. You know, that's fine. I'm not expecting, I don't make work for everyone to love. But, you know, I'm just thankful that, you know, you're showing my work. It gets a different audience out there. And I think the digital aspect of that, it makes it more global. You know, maybe I wouldn't be showing in Chicago if I hadn't have had that person come to you and say, check out Arran's work. So that's the beauty of it in a sense. But then there's also that physical spectacle that is not there. I guess you can't have everything, can you? But it is a very important aspect of showing, and I think it's something I miss, even just going to openings, talking to people about my work, or that's important, but also just listening to what they have to say. Do you know, I've had some beautiful conversations with people over the phone, even who have purchased work of mine, saying why they love it, and picking up on that fact that, you know, even though I can't see it, there's an essence there that I'm able to pick, or there's something from it that I can gather from it. And I think it's because it's a book. We're also used to handling a book, you know, or what a book looks like. We can start to, I don't know, it brings back memories. It comes back to that aspect of time and memories, and this is what this collection of work is all about. I know I'm not going to repeat myself, but it doesn't mean I'm going to make this. Yeah, I'd like to continue making this work. It depends on what books are available, you know. So that's why I've kind of had a slow patch. There's not a huge amount of work being produced just now, book-wise, pages-wise. I've got a few coming out this week, next week actually, and just documenting all that stuff.
I'm always interested in artists' own collecting habits. I'm guessing you're someone who owns a lot of books.
Yeah, I do. I've got just around the corner, I've got a whole a bookshelf, yeah. And I tend to just, I'm really bad. I'm all about, I'm not a huge reader, but I do love, I've got tons of art books around the corner, yeah. And I've got all my faves.
To go back for a moment about what you were talking about in terms of reach and digitizing just a record of things, it's also interesting to me, forgive me there, that's sort of a last dimension to this idea of record keeping, that you've in some way categorically recorded these objects and their lives and acknowledgement of them, and to archive them in a way that is relevant to today, in the way that we all archive everything. Whether that's to publish it someplace on a website or on Instagram, or just to have it on a hard drive on your computer. But it seems like a logical last step in a way, the record of the record, the record of the practice. So to me, all of that ties up very neatly. And in some ways, this is really sensible work to be showing in that way, or to be indexing, or to have sort of an indexical presentation of. And that was another element that appealed to me about bringing this into an online show, was that there seemed to be, again, this kind of archival element, which is something that's really deeply personally important to my practice, that really seem to fall into step with the way that you handle these materials as objects and as a body of work, not just as individual works.
Yeah, I even just love the fact that when you see these pages or these works on your website or anywhere, it's kind of like seeing a little bookshelf, you know, and actually just brings back to life. It brings it back to their origin, really, of how they're presented or where they once were but however in a digital format. You know, they're not scrunched up together like a salon hang, you know, that they're actually, yeah, they've got their own little life, and they're exhibited in a new way, and it's nice. I like that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Arran, for taking time out to talk with me today, and for sharing your work with us here in Chicago, and with everyone who participated in this show one way or the other, as viewers, as collectors, as yourself as the artist. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you again. Take care.